Tutti, io sono Babi Giannakopoulos, lavorando per la Commissione Europea. Farò il discorso in inglese, la presentazione, però dopo possiamo ricevere domande e rispondere anche in italiano. Quindi, the subject of the presentation is the European Defence Fund and the research window. I'll try to be brief on certain aspects of the presentation because they have been already addressed by previous speakers. And I will try to put new elements that I think you want to hear more information, even if they are not in the slides. Because during the discussions I saw that there was some kind of interest for certain issues, so I'll try to address them. Before starting the presentation, I have to tell you a bit of my background. I am in the Commission dealing with defense research already from 2013, and I must be the only survival from that time in the defense area in the Commission. So in that sense, I have been involved in most of the things that you speak about now, and in that sense also I can be blamed for that, since I had to do things in there. So, starting a bit with the policy context and the background. I'll be brief, but I'll try to give some more of the background. It's not a recent history. The defense research and development is not recent in the EU. It starts already from 2011-12. Even if I think most of the people here, they know the developments after 2015-16 regarding the European Defence Fund. But already in 2012 there was a European Council which asked the Commission to see what the Commission can do in the area of defence. And this was because during that time there was the Arab Spring, quite a lot of unrest in the borders of the Union and beyond, of course. And it was an increasing complexity. Then you remember there was Arabic Spring. Then sometime after we had the crisis in Crimea and in Ukraine, with the complexity of the hybrid aspect, and also blurring this concept of what it is internal and what is external. And already then, in 2013, there was the plan of the preparatory action in defense research. So there was already in the policy a vision for going for a defense research program sometime in the future. We had announced the launching of preparatory action, which of course it was launched only in 2017. And we were aware already back then that these things were coming. Now, in 2015, there were the terrorist attacks around Europe, which increased the perception of threat for European citizens, which gave a more push to this security defense aspect in terms of European involvement. And of course, there was we shouldn't be shy on that. There were two major political events that pushed to that direction and created defense as a major European program, a European policy. And the first one was the Brexit, which was a disruptive, it was called, point for European policy. So back then they were looking for a policy area that could relaunch the European project, and this is defense. And then later there was the election of President Trump in the United States, which increased the anxiety of European states regarding the engagement of the US in what they call their defense and security policy. So all that contributed to even further increasing the importance of defense in the policy context of the Union. And of course, as it was said before, there were this global strategy, and then there was action plan and so on. But then there was also a part of what is the reality we have to meet in the markets and the industry part. And so we had a quite fragmented market. So the market in Europe is not unique. It's not a free market. It's not a competitive market. We know that in each and every country there are special ways of dealing with defense procurement and defense research. And the same thing, it created what we call an overcapacity of the European industry. We know that we have much more industry and much more industrial capacity to do defense systems in Europe than we have, than we need. And then you can see the numbers that they are always with how many systems we have in Europe, how many we have in the United States, how many companies we have in Europe, and how many in the United States, which are used to demonstrate that actually we have more capacity than the market can afford. And of course, there's an increasing global competition. You have seen that recently Russians were already there, but Chinese are also entering in an area in a quite strong way in markets in Asia and not only, which creates more competition for European industry to find clients outside Europe, which is vital for them to survive also and be able to provide the systems in Europe. And of course there are all these, it was said before, new source of innovation. There is all this innovation that comes from the civilian side and it can go to the defense side. So for all these reasons, it was considered necessary to go for a global plan for addressing the defense industrial part in the area of the European policy. And this is the job of the Commission. I don't speak about the others because there is an operational part and a capability part which is within the competences of other bodies, and of course it is member states' idea. But in the area of industry and research, it's something we can do something. And then there was the European Defence Action Plan in November 2016, 30th November 2016, where the launch of a European Defence Fund has been announced, together with other actions which are not relevant for the discussion. You have seen that already. This is the positioning of the European Defence Fund regarding the various phases of development, research, development, and acquisition of systems. Of course, there is not the full cycle of the procurement, but still, this can be said that it is included in the last part. So there is a research window, which currently is active through the preparatory action on defence research. There is a capability window, which for the research window there is 100% EU funding. This is something we, according of course to the rules of financial regulation, because some could say that still it's not 100% funding. For the development there is a EU and member states co-funding, and it was said before, this is under discussion and we still in a trialogue with the legislative bodies. So the union budget will cover some of the costs, and then the rest will be covered by the participants and other sources. And there is the latest part, which is the acquisition of goods. It's not acquisition of services, it is acquisition of systems themselves. And there the union does not provide funding for that, but it can provide practical support. What is that? Could be in the area of trying to put together demand, or try to see how we could set up financial instruments which can facilitate that. So this is more or less the idea. In the future there will be a post-2021 reality, but now I speak about what it is until 2020. Budget. It's funny because in the previous you can see that this is budget expectations per year. I don't go into numbers right now, because in previous slides we're saying these are provisional numbers or asked numbers. And this is still the case, but it is funny because these are the only numbers that seem to be stable and valid for what the Commission will propose for the budget after 2020. So for the next multi-annual financial framework, 21-27, if everything goes like that, the Commission will actually ask, as you can see in the last line, 500 million per year for research and 1 billion per year for the development. And this is, strangely enough, the only number for which we are sure that it will be like that in the budget. It doesn't mean that it will be at the end like that, because there is the Commission is the executive part. There will be a legislative, the co-legislators that have to address it, so the Parliament and the Council that at the end will decide what will be the final amount. And having said that, it will be the next Parliament, so we have elections in 2019, and then there will be a new Parliament that will have to take such a decision. And of course, we have to see what the Council will be in 19, because there are so many elections, as you very well know, and we don't know what will be the priorities of the national governments regarding these things. Anyway, so for the preparatory action it will be 90 million, and that's what we ask. We have already committed 25 million for 2017, and the budget was approved for 40 million in 2018. And then we need another 25 million to complete the actions in 2019, and we are fairly optimistic that this will be the case. For the development part, it's not easy to understand all the time, but the EU budget will contribute 500 million for 2019 and 2020, which has to be matched by investment from other sources, the member states investment, which will total probably 2 billion if we keep the 20% contribution of the budget to all projects. Of course, as it is now during negotiation in the Parliament and in the Council, if we don't keep this 20% for all the projects, then you can understand that the budget we have to find from member states it is less. After 2020, so in the next framework, as I told before, there will be 500 million for research. This will be 100% funding of the total eligible costs. And then there will be 1 billion per year, which has to be matched respectively from member states and other sources. This would mean that yearly in European research and development, defense research and development projects should be invested 5.5 billion. And this is something which is quite a challenge. It is a challenge to already to find 500 million of cooperative projects in research per year. But then I believe that there will be creativity. As soon as we'll be there, there will be creativity for people. But what it is even more difficult is to match member states' funds for the development projects. I mean, if you think that currently the research and development budget of all the EU member states or the EDA member states, it's around 8 billion per year. It means that half of it should go to cooperative projects, and this is really a big thing. It's not easy to imagine how it happens if this stays like that. So this is a bit what we cover in the preparatory action. There are some categories of research, so defense research and demonstration project, which is covered with the budget of 17 and 18, and I'll tell you afterwards which one it is, even if I believe that most of you may already know. There is what we call critical defense technologies, which we cover in 2018 and probably also in 2019. There is a part for disruptive technologies. Well, it's probably better to speak about beyond the current state-of-the-art technologies. And standardization, interoperability, and of course there are two horizontal studies which are funded, one in 17 and another in 18, through coordination and support actions. One is a strategic technology foresight, so a study to see what we want to do in the future, what will be disruptive in the future for defense, in order to be able to pursue these actions in the next program. And in 2018 there will be a similar study, but which will try to address technology non-dependence of Europe, so technology for which we depend from non-EU countries. You all probably know ITAR, so the US dependence, but not only, so especially in the electronic components there is quite a lot of it. So identify those dependencies, map them, see what we can do with them, prioritize and create technology roadmaps which we can follow in the future by investing funding in order to be at some time in 2025 or 2030 less dependent on non-EU sources for having our own systems and capabilities. The main areas, thematically speaking, you can see them in the vertical part. There is one which is a C4ISR focus, another one is effects, and there is the part with force protection and soldier systems, and there is the latest one, which is the last one, is the unmanned platforms, which covers the strengths as you see it, but the smallest cells are those that they take more money. It's problem of the boxes, it's not problem of money. So in 2017, probably preempting the discussion for whatever it is, in 2 days you speak about preparatory action. There were 3 calls. One was on unmanned platforms, and this is a technological demonstrator for enhanced situational awareness in a naval environment. Force protection and soldier system, as you can see, force protection and advanced soldier systems beyond current programs, as we say, and the technology foresight, as I told you before in the previous slide. I go to the next one. We know which are the projects that have been awarded. There is Ocean 2020, which is one project led by Leonardo, and this is for 2017 and 2018 will take 35.5 million euro of funding. Then there are 3 winning consortia for the force protection and soldier systems. The first one is for the ballistic protection, the second one is in camouflage, and the third one is in soldier system standards. And then there was the PIFIA, which is already signed the grant agreement, and it is about the technology foresight, with strong as well Italian participation. You can find more information about these projects in the link that is included in there. What I have to say in terms of participation, because I heard about small and medium enterprises a lot, and then we have some first data from these first calls. It's a small. We don't have such a big base to make inferences on what are the chances. But from this one, what we can tell is that if you see only the participation, there is a 30% of SMEs in all projects. But this is it is just participation. If you go to the budget, how much of the budget was given to SMEs, it goes down to around 50% for all the projects. However, if you go to the force protection and soldier systems, which are smaller projects and are more, it's closer to SMEs, you can see that the participation of SMEs is bigger than the participation of the prime contractors. So you have a lot of research and technology organizations, but you also have, then you have SMEs, who have getting around 25-30% of the budget, and then there are the prime contractors, and this is interesting to see because there's a lot of discussion how you can allow SMEs to enter in the projects and receive funding also for research. One probably way is that to see not to go through let's say regulatory means to enforce the participation of SMEs, but instead to see where SMEs can do their best just because they are good enough to do the job. they are better, they are more competitive than that are the prime contractors. So 2018, we have 40 million, I said. The work program is almost it's finalized, where it is going to be adopted in a few days. And the calls will be published in March, April 2018. And there are 3 calls. The last one is what I told you about the European non-dependence. It is a study, more or less. But there are 2 technology projects. The first one is a high-performance, trustable, and configurable system on a chip or system in package for defense applications. And this is very much in the electronic components, or it's in the heart of electronic components. Thematic could be roughly between 10 and 12 million one project. And then there is a project for a high-power laser effector, which is a combination of a study on what we need, a roadmap for how we can do it, and part of dealing with a part of technology aspect of this roadmap, which would be roughly around 5.5 million euro. You can ask yourself why we have so little money and for 40 million budget. The answer is simple, because the other half of it goes for the demonstrator Ocean 2020. So, where we are with the research window in post-2020, after the preparatory action, which will be evolving in the future. So it will be post-2020. The budget we spoke about that before. The proposal of the Commission is expected to be adopted in May, June 2018, in a few months practically. How it works: the Commission adopts the legislative proposal, and this then goes to the legislative bodies, the Parliament and the Council, to see how much of it they like. They make change, there are amendments, and at the end it is adopted after this procedure of trialogue. It's not expected to be adopted by legislators before 2019 to 2020. So, and then during that time there will be a quite lengthy negotiation, considering also the breaks that will be necessarily for the European elections, the change of the Commission, and so on and so on. So it will be probably the next Commission and the next Parliament that will have to finish all these things. The thematic of it is, we have to see. This is what we put in the communication for the European Defence Fund. So, research activities supporting the developments of defence-related projects and innovative technologies. Good. And should be capability-driven, including critical defence technologies, exploratory and disruptive research, and strengthen the technological leadership of the European defence industry. It's good to say it like that, and it includes everything. What we are going to do, it is still to be defined. As I told you before, there are 2 windows. I think how much money we have, how much we can spend, what is the best way to do it, and of course, whatever it is, this budget we will have, we have to follow also the logic of research and development, in the sense that in the research you are trying to see what it can work, and as soon as you prove that this can be meaningful for the applications, then you have to pass it to the development, and then you need hardcore, let's say, technical military requirements in order to make it work. So this is a clear, let's say, division of tasks within the research window and what research we should do, and then there will be the development program. But still they are connected. And this is the development program. I don't want to say more on that because it's not my area. You see the budget now, it's this, and we spoke about the budget. However, what it is interesting to say is that we are working on the assumption that probably we'll have a unique program. So it will not be two different programs, not a research program and a development program, but will be a research and development program. Because it makes more sense to keep things together, and it can also facilitate our life in dealing in one area with defense and not everywhere in multiple programs. It's not decided yet, even if we are, if we need to adopt it by May, June this year, but still there are discussions whether it will be together, and there are still discussions on the legal base, because some of you may be interested in that. And it's not necessarily to be the legal base of research, as it was said before by one of the speakers, speaking about Article 179 and 180. It's not yet decided whether it will be part of the research program or not. Now, this was meant to be the presentation for the program. I won't go a little bit on some aspects that were asked before. There was a Brexit question here. What would be the involvement of British companies and the UK in the programs? The answer is simple: depends. It depends on what kind of deal we will have for Brexit. So, what will be the deal for the separation deal? What will be the transition period deal? And what will be the future relationship deal? The working assumption is that will be a soft separation with a transition period which will actually until the end of this financial framework. So for all the commitments we'll do for 2019 and 20, UK will participate normally to everything without having decision-making role. So UK entities will be able to participate as they did in the past. This is the working assumption. And then we have to see what will be the future relationship, even if we know that both parties, the UK and all the EU, all the others in the EU, are very interested in keeping a quite close relationship in security and defense. However, this is subject to the final agreement, and this can change at any time if the priorities, political and other, change. This is about the Brexit. Another issue, it is a bit bigger, and I will try to introduce a bit briefly. It was the IPR arrangements, intellectual property rights. I can be quite detailed in that, so I will keep it for later if you have specific questions. And I can be detailed in the sense that we had a quite lengthy working group of member states and the industry for 1.5 years in order to be able to define the intellectual property rights for the preparatory action. And it was not easy. And it is always the most difficult part when you come to intellectual property rights in these programs. Everybody says, oh, that's the most difficult part, which indeed it is, because it's where people there are making money. Don't know. So, there are two aspects in intellectual property rights. What are the rights for the beneficiaries and the members of the same consortium, and why you need to address them? And there are the aspects of what kind of access has the Union and the member states in when we come down to defense and security. Now, the actions are grants. Grants, in principle, are gifts. Gifts under conditions. If you buy, you make a procurement. It's there where you buy, and you dictate the terms and conditions in a very, very clear way, because you buy the things. You are procuring. In this case, would be procuring of research services, which we don't do right now, and we may do in the future, but we don't do right now. So we are in grants, our subvention. So there, what it is, the first concern is to make it possible through the IPR arrangements that the project can go on, can develop. So one part of and the biggest part of the IPR arrangements in the preparatory action, but also in Horizon 2020, is how you make sure that everybody in a consortium can do its job and can have an interest in participating in the project. So, what you do? You say that when it is about the deployment of the action, so when you are working within the project, everybody needs to have access to the information, including IPR, of the others that is necessary for themselves to do their job. And this is something we put in, which is in the rules. Further on, you say, but when it comes for them, because this is the reason they participate, to exploit their results, so to further develop them, to make a product, to sell something, you make in advance a requirement, unless there is a different agreement in the consortium agreement of the consortium, that they will be able to have access to the IPR, to the necessary IPR of the other participants, in order to be able to commercialize their part of the research. So these are things that are there in order to facilitate consortia to work together. This is not an easy thing, and in defense is even less easy, even if we have seen now that in OSCE in 2020 there are 42 participants, so probably there must be a way that it works. Now, this is one part regarding participants and member states and members of the consortium. When it comes to the access to results for the Union and for member states. So, what we have in preparatory action, and this is the same in Horizon 2020, is by default the Union has access rights to all the results for developing, monitoring its policies and programs, but this should be limited only to non-commercial and non-competitive use. So we can take it for audit reasons, to see what we need to do in the future programs. We see we did something and we want to build on that and do something new, to be able to evaluate whether our policies were good enough, and of course to avoid double funding. We don't want to pay twice, one in one project, one in another project, somewhere else in a structural funds funding in a region, to fund the same kind of research all the time. So these are the reasons we have this access as a union. Now, when it comes to member states, there are other issues, other kind of sensibilities. One sensibility is that, first of all, member states, they need to know what it is in there, because it is a matter of defense and security, and in that sense is sensitive for their sovereignty. You want to know what threats there may be out there, and what ways there may be to counter these threats. So it is important to know what there is in there in terms of security. And of course there is, from the other part in that area, there is this concern about keep saving the industrial interests of the participants, because you cannot disclose all this information of the results to all member states, because then everybody could do sub-licensing to their own industry or sell it around, and then there could be no motivation to participate in that. So the solution that we came to after there was an additional concern before going to the solution. Also, member states, they don't want to pay twice for the same thing. No? It's not only the union that doesn't want to pay for one project once and for one project in another time. It's also member states that if that they want to know that if they are going to develop something further on the basis of an existing research, they are not made to pay for something that was developed somewhere else. They want to use their money for making the most out of it. So what is the solution? The solution is the first solution is we created what we call a special report. So a special report is a report which is done to be distributed to member states, national authorities, defense authorities, which contains for each project all information regarding what it was done, what are the performance, where we started, what is the final stage, without though disclosing information about the know-how and without passing intellectual property to anybody. So this is an informative report, substantial, it has to be quite substantial, and therefore it can be also sensitive in terms of security and classification. But it is something which is substantial and has to give it to member states without putting in danger the industrial interests of the participants. So this is what we call the special report, and this is distributed to all the defense authorities of the member states in the preparatory action. I speak always to the preparatory action and the research part. Then, at a later stage, if 2 or more member states are interested in further developing one of the technologies that are one of the results of the technologies that are already in a preparatory action project, if they are interested and they conclude a kind of contract with the participants that they own these results, then these participants, they have to disclose their own results to these member states in order that these contracting authorities be able to verify that actually what they are paying for at the later stage it's not covered already by the previous. It's not very easy to understand if I explain it like that. You need some time to process it, but this is a way to do it. So this is the IPR. I have to, a last thing for the EDIDP, so the development part, there are no IPR provisions right now. It is quite empty. So all this that I said about IPR, it's not valid for EDIDP, it's only for the preparatory action. And I think I have to finish here.